What is the ruling on using weak hadith? This is a methodological question. What is the ruling on using da'if hadith?
وما أرسلنا من قبلك إلا رجالا نوحي إليهم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون.
Hadith are categorized in many categories. For our purposes, we'll say 5 main categories you should all be aware of. Number 1, grade A, sahih. Number 2, grade B, hasan. Number 3, grade C, da'if. Number 4, grade D, which is da'if jiddan. And number 5, grade F, fabricated, fabricated. Grade F, fabricated, we know for a fact the Prophet did not say it. Fabricated, we know ilm al-yaqeen, we know this is a kadhib, this is a lie. For example, the infamous fabricated hadith, seek knowledge even if you have to go to China. This is fabricated, the Prophet never uttered it, we know exactly who fabricated it. So this is fabricated. Now, Sahih and Hasan, the only difference between them is the quality of narrators. You know, you have grade A and you have grade B students. They're both good. They're both above average. They're both passing the class with good. If you get a B in a class, overall you've done good. You know, 2 thumbs up or a thumb and a half up, no big deal. The A students, mashallah, excellent. So Hasan hadith is grade B. Okay, above average, good. Good, you did the job. Hasan hadith is essentially an authentic hadith, and for our purposes it is sahih unless it clashes with the sahih, in which case we give precedence to sahih over hasan. Otherwise, grade A and B, good enough. Now, grade C and D, there's something called da'if and there's something called da'if jiddan. Da'if is a weak hadith, and there are over 35 reasons why a hadith can be weak. The most common one, the person in the chain is unknown, or there's a missing link, a very small missing link. For example, one narrator who was born in 100 Hijrah narrates from Abu Hurairah, who died in 57 Hijrah. So how did the guy born in 100 Hijrah or born in 80 Hijrah hear from Abu Hurairah? There's a missing link. Right? So, and this is typically in early Islam when we weren't, things were not fully codified. So this is a da'if hadith. We don't know. What does it mean a hadith is da'if? It means we are not certain. Maybe the Prophet ﷺ said it, maybe he didn't. We are uncertain. Da'if jiddan, we are fairly certain that he did not say it, but it's not an intentional fabrication. It's a mistake from one of the narrators. Some narrator made a mistake, somebody messed up something, but it's not a fabrication. A fabrication means we know somebody intentionally lied. So da'if jiddan, for our purposes, we throw it out the window. It's clearly an error, but it's not a fabrication. Now, the controversy comes over only category C, which is da'if. And in a nutshell, the vast majority of scholars from early Islam to medieval Islam to pre-modern Islam, 13 centuries of scholarship. This is so much so that many ulama even said there is ijma' or there is ittifaq of the ulama. They said a da'if hadith, listen to this carefully, can never be used for theology. You cannot derive aqeedah from a da'if hadith, or for halal and haram. You cannot base a ruling of halal and haram from a da'if hadith. But the vast majority of scholars said you may use it in what is called nafil actions, or supererogatory, or fada'il, or encouragement. So to encourage people to do something generically good, you may use da'if hadith. And this is the explicit opinion of hundreds of ulama, and there's no time to go into them. But the most famous amongst them, beginning with Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal himself, he said, when we narrate a hadith about halal and haram, he made a fist. He said, shaddadna, we make it strict. And then when we narrate hadith about other things, he opened his hand, tasahalna, we make it easy. Okay, about fada'il, tasahalna, he made it easy. This is Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and Ibn Abd al-Barr and Imam al-Nawawi in his famous commentary on a book of the sciences of hadith, Rawdat al-Muhibbin, one of the most famous commentaries of the books of hadith. Ibn Salah wrote a book about hadith and the science of hadith. Imam al-Nawawi commented on it. And in it he says there is consensus of the ulama. In other words, he didn't know of any difference of opinion. There is consensus of the ulama that a weak hadith may be used as long as some conditions are met. Number one, it is used in fada'il, which is, as we said, encouraging good things, or talking about generically something bad and everybody knows it's bad, but a hadith comes with a specific reward or a specific, punishment, we may use that. Number two, that it is not haram and halal, it is not theology. And then some have added number three, that the one who narrates the hadith should tell the audience that it is a weak hadith. Now, and number three is some ulama didn't accept it has to be done. In any case, this had been the famous methodology throughout most of Islam. However, many later scholars began to be very lax, and they began using da'if jiddan, maybe even fabricated hadith. And it became something very common, especially after, let's say medieval times. So let's say from around 900, 1000 Hijrah, the science of hadith, there really was no great mujaddid to come in the sciences of hadith. So scholars became very lax. If it's found in some book somewhere, we can quote it. And this led to a counter-reaction. What was that counter-reaction? And by the way, Newton's law, what is Newton's law? For every action there is a equal and opposite reaction, right? So there's also something in Islamic theology. For every extremism, there is always an equal and opposite counter-extremism. Take this as a rule of thumb throughout Islamic history. Every time one group did one thing extreme, another group does another thing to counter it in an extreme manner. And we cannot react emotionally. We are ummatan wasata. But this is human nature, it is human history. And we see this, by the way, across the board in every issue. In any case, I'm thinking about governments and whatnot, and you see what's going on, and the extremists here and extremists there. And anyway, so the point being that when this extreme laxity came, one of our great scholars of the previous generation, Sheikh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani, may Allah Azza wa Jal exalt his ranks and forgives his sins. He died in 1999, and there is no question, and even his critics agree, that Sheikh al-Albani really revived the love of the sciences of hadith and the love of being meticulous. Where did the hadith come from? Who narrated it? Where'd you get it from? What's your source? Even his critics acknowledge that he did a lot to revive the love of the sciences of hadith. So Shaykh al-Albani was somebody whom Allah wrote a lot of love for, a lot of acceptance for. And in his love for hadith, he began propagating a view that some have said no one before him ever said. And that is that da'if hadith should never be used for anything. And we should treat them essentially as if they are fabricated. For practical purposes, they might as well be fabricated. He didn't say they are fabricated. He said we treat them as if they're da'if jiddan, as if their existence and non-existence is the same. And he did this because he loved the sunnah. He did this because he thought he wants to purify the sunnah from anything that might be 50-50, doubtful. And Allah wrote for him a lot of love, and his students took this and they began spreading a very strict position, no da'if hadith ever for anything. So much so they began saying this is the dominant position of early Islam. And they began saying this is the opinion of Imam al-Bukhari, of Imam Muslim, of Ibn Taymiyyah, of so and so. And they began listing a long list of people. And with my utmost respect, this is a mistake to claim those people said this about da'if hadith. And the simple reality is the greatest scholar of hadith, Imam al-Bukhari, the single greatest scholar of hadith, Imam al-Bukhari, he wrote 22 books of hadith. Of them we have still existent, around 12 are still existent. In every one of them, without exception, he used da'if hadith except one, and that is his Sahih. And so even Imam al-Bukhari, and no one can accuse him of not loving the sunnah, and no one can accuse him of not knowing Sahih and Hasan and Da'if. In every single book of his, along with Imam Muslim wrote a number of books. He wrote Kitab al-Tamyiz, and he wrote his Muqaddimah. In his other books, Imam Muslim himself has hadith that are slightly weak. And of course he knows they're weak because they're not in his Sahih. He purposely did not put them in his Sahih. So Imam al-Bukhari wanted to give you the creme de la creme, grade A. This is my Sahih. But he fully understood that it is permissible to use da'if hadith for broader things. And the same goes for Ibn Taymiyyah, his books, and I have read hundreds of volumes of Ibn Taymiyyah. Everybody knows this, that Ibn Taymiyyah used da'if hadith all the time, not for fiqh, not for theology, but for blessings and whatnot. This is well known. So with my utmost respect to this later school, and I know some people are very sensitive about this, but please read and do your research with me. I graduated from the College of Hadith, and I myself used to say once upon a time, 25 years ago, we should only use Sahih Hadith, Sahih Hadith. But when you study, when you learn, and when you see, then you realize this position is really a new one, and the classical position is the one that the vast majority of ulama use, and so it should be used properly. We use Imam al-Nawawi's conditions, and that is, you do not use it for haram and halal, you do not use it for theology, you use it only to encourage generic good. Let me give you some basic examples of da'if hadith that are used, and why should we not use them. For example, in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, we have a da'if hadith. Why is it da'if? One of the narrators, we don't know much about him, he's just a name. We don't know much about him. The da'if hadith is that on the day of judgment, the Hafidh al-Quran will come and he will make shafa'ah for 10 people from his family members. He will give shafa'ah for 10 people. Another da'if hadith also in Tirmidhi, that on the judgment day, the Hafidh al-Quran will come and his parents will have a crown of light because of their son or daughter, that they've done hifz to him. Now, these hadith are da'if. Let me ask you, is it Islamic to memorize the Quran, yes or no? Yes. Okay, now we understand. So what if we quote in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, there is this hadith that anyone who memorizes the Quran, his parents will have a taj, will have a crown that the angels will place on them, and they'll be recognized that my son, my daughter was Hafidh al-Quran. Is there any harm in encouraging parents to want to gain this? What is the negative? And that's what the vast majority of scholars have said, that okay, the concept of memorizing the Quran, it's not being proven from the da'if hadith. Because if it was only da'if hadith, well, then we're in trouble. Where are we getting it from? And so when those da'if hadith that are proving something new fiqh, new halal, new haram, that might be problematic. But it's generically known, everybody should memorize the Quran. Da'if hadith comes and gives you a certain blessing that might not be found anywhere else. What do we lose? Because, remember this point, da'if hadith, maybe the Prophet ﷺ said it and maybe he didn't. So put your trust in Allah. And, brutally honest, I'm Hafidh. I pray inshaAllah, Allah puts taj on my parents on Judgment Day. Wallahi, I pray like this. Why can't we? Why can't we have that good intention of Allah? What do we lose by encouraging the generic good when people follow da'if hadith? With the caveat, as we said, we do not derive haram and halal by unanimous consensus. So that in a nutshell is the issue of da'if hadith.